What's up? Welcome to God is Glamorous. My name is Johanna, where we learn how to live our best lives through Jesus Christ. And today we have such a special video. We are going to be talking about how to keep faith, how to trust God, and how to believe in your promised land. So this one's going to be a good one because I had this on my heart for probably about 3 to 4 weeks. But I don't think God was really ready for me to actually put this out there until I fully had all my points together. So I think this is going to be a really special video because it not only teaches you to have faith and to trust in God, but this story also gives you an insight of how God is actually like. I believe that this story takes you through almost all of the emotions that God has. It takes you through God's forgiveness, God's mercy, God's love, God's miraculous power. But it also takes you through a story of God's frustration and God's anger and God's punishment on his people. So if you are ever curious about who God is and what are his characteristics and what are his personality traits, this is definitely the video for you. So let's get right into it. Also, if you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe so that you never miss another video. All right, so I'm going to make this super quick. I'm going to try to get through this as much as I can because the sun is setting and I need all the light I can get. All right, so the story starts off with God speaking to Abraham way in the book of Genesis. And God is telling Abraham that he is going to make Abraham the father of many. He asked Abraham to take a look at the stars, count the stars, and as numerous as the stars are, those are how many that's how many descendants that he is going to have. So not only did he promise Abraham that he'd have so many descendants, one of which actually became Jesus, but he also told Abraham to go to the land of Canaan, which is the current modern day Israel, and he promised that the descendants and his children and the children of Israel will essentially inhabit that land. So Abraham goes and takes his wife and takes Lot, and they go to the land of Canaan. And God essentially prophesied that there will be the Israelites, which are Abraham's descendants, and they will be enslaved in Egypt for 430 years. So fast forward to the book of Exodus, God calls Moses to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt because they are currently enslaved there. So God, with his miraculous power, he convinces Pharaoh to let the people go. I'm sure you've heard that story, let my people go. Pharaoh says no. God sends a number of plagues, and eventually, after the very last straw, Pharaoh lets the people go. So all the Israelites, it's literally about 600,000 Israelites. They are walking out of Egypt. They are going out of Egypt, and they're going to be led into the promised land, and they are being led by God. So God leads them through a pillar, a cloud by day, and fire by night. So God is with them every single step of the way, and God is essentially providing for them on their journey to the promised land. So God gives them a series of tests throughout this time, and most of which, or all of which, they almost essentially fail all of them. And during that time, the Israelites are ungrateful, they're frustrated, they're complaining, and we see God's patience over and over again. God is becoming so patient with the children of Israel. So the first test they actually pass because they trust God is when God leads them to the Red Sea. And during this time, the Egyptians, they change their mind. They're like, wait a minute, I can't believe we actually let the Israelites leave. We're going to go back and get them. So the Egyptians are coming to get the Israelites back. So God leads them into the sea. God, through the help of Moses, or through the assistance of Moses, parts the Red Sea as the Israelites walk through. So as the Egyptians are coming, God protects the Israelites by closing the Red Sea, and all the Egyptians drown. So that was one of the first instances in which they were able to see, aside from the plagues that God sent to Egypt, that was one of the first instances in which they were truly able to witness God's miraculous power. So after they part the Red Sea, they come across a series of different challenges. There's a food shortage, there is a water shortage, there is a water problem. They turn a calf into an idol. And they are just constantly complaining. So there's one instance where they become hungry and they're like, why did you send us out here? It would be better if we just go back to Egypt, because even though we were slaves in Egypt, we were eating really, really good. And it's amazing how your hunger causes you to want to leave the promise that God gives you and go back to your enslaved land. So God was patient with them, and God said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to allow bread to fall from the sky, and I'm going to send quail. Since you love meat so much, I'm going to send quail for you to eat as well. So that was one of the ways in which God was able to provide for them. There was also a time when there was a water shortage. There was no water to be found at all. So through the assistance of Moses, God actually allowed water to come from a rock. So as you can see, all these miraculous signs, all these miraculous powers that God has, the children of Israel were able to witness that miraculous power. So fast forward after a series of events, because there are so many events, I cannot get through all of the events in one video, but it is finally time for the Israelites to possess the land of Canaan, the land flowing with milk and honey, which is the promised land. So God tells the children of Israel to appoint 12 leaders, or 12 spies, and those spies will be the 12 leaders from each of the 12 tribes to go into the land of Canaan, to scope out the land and to spy on it and see what exactly the land is working with. So they go into the promised land, they scope it out, and they're there for 40 days. And then when they return, they have a two-part series of reports. So they come back and they're like, oh my gosh, this land is crazy. It is just what God said it would be. It is flowing with milk and honey. Look at these grapes. These grapes are huge. Like, everything about it was amazing. But there was one problem to the children of Israel, the ones that did not believe. They said, we cannot go there. There are all kinds of giants. We look like grasshoppers compared to these giants. But Joshua and Caleb said, no, we can defeat these giants. God is on our side. Have you not seen the miraculous powers where he parted the Red Sea, where he provided for us, where he killed the Egyptians and all that? God is going to be there, and God is going to be able to fight for us. But the other spies, they were like, no. And they essentially lied to the people and made them think that there was absolutely no hope. So as a result, all the children of Israel, they lost faith. They wanted to stone Moses. And then they also wanted to appoint a leader to take them back to Egypt, take them back into slavery. And not only that, they even said, it would be better if we just died here. Why don't we just die in Egypt? Or why, I wish that we just died in the wilderness. And God was like, you know what? Okay, your wish is my command. So because you did not believe in me, you will not be able to inherit the promised land. Anyone over the age of 20 is not going to inhabit the land of the promised land. So he essentially said, okay, all you unbelievers, you are not allowed to enter. The only ones that are able to enter are Joshua and Caleb, because they had a different spirit. They believed in me. And some of you need to realize that your promise is in your possession as long as you believe in God. Although you may not see it now, although there may be a lot of frustrations ahead of you, as long as you have the faith and know that God is going to bring you into your promised land, it is going to happen. So one of the best things that you need to make sure that you have is a spirit of belief and faith. All right, so the first point that I want to make is the fact that you must remember God's promise to you. God wants you to live a life of abundance. It says in John 10:10 that I have come, Jesus has come, so that you may have life and live it to the full. So remember that God is on your side in everything that you do. As long as you are living your life right, as long as you are following God's commandments, as long as you are within his will, God will make sure that you succeed. Because when you succeed, it brings his name glory and honor. So remember that God's promise is for you to live a life of abundance. That is God's promise to you, so make sure that you believe in it. The second point that I want to make is the fact that always remember that God is a provider. So when the children of Israel were going from point A to point B, from Egypt to the land of Canaan, there were shortages. There were food shortages, there was water shortages, and God provided. He made a way literally out of no way. When there was a food shortage, God sent manna, bread, it fell from the sky. God sent quail. When there was a water shortage, God made water come out from a rock. So although you may feel as though there is going to be no hope for you, or you're maybe struggling about money or resources, just know and have faith that God is literally a God that can make a way out of no way. So always remember those specific promises. The third point that I want to make is the fact that God will fight for you. So after the 12 spies came back and gave a report of what exactly the land of Canaan was looking like, there was a negative report from the people who did not believe, and there was a positive report from Joshua and Caleb. And they said, just believe that God is going to fight for us. God is going to fight our battles. So Caleb was actually the one who had the faith, and this is what he said. So in Numbers chapter 14, verses 7 through 9, it says, they said to the whole community of Israel, the land we explored is very good. If the Lord is pleased with us, he will bring us into the land and give it to us. This is a land flowing with milk and honey. Don't rebel against the Lord, and don't be afraid of the people of the land. We will devour them like bread. They have no protection, and the Lord is with us, so don't be afraid of them. So Joshua and Caleb had the faith. They knew that God would protect them. But the others did not have the faith, and as a result, God's favor left them, and they were punished, and they were not allowed to enter the promised land except for Joshua and Caleb. So make sure that you have the faith, because you don't want to ruin your chances of getting to the promised land because of your unbelief. Have the faith, know that God is going to fight your battles, and God will definitely make sure that you get the victory every single time. So the fourth point that I want to make is to have an attitude of gratitude. So acknowledge the fact that God provides for you and be grateful for it. So the children of Israel, they witnessed all kinds of miraculous signs that God was able to provide for them. Still, they had unbelief, and God was not happy, and as a result, they were not able to enter that promised land as mentioned, but only Caleb and Joshua. So Moses was literally asking God to forgive the children of Israel because God was really, really angry. So God forgave them, but he did have a condition, and this was his condition. The Lord said, I forgive them as you have asked, but as I live and as the glory of the Lord fills the whole earth, I solemnly swear that none of the people who saw my glory and the miraculous signs I did in Egypt and in the desert will see the land which I promised their ancestors. They have tested me now 10 times and refused to obey. None of those who treat me with contempt will see it. But because my servant Caleb has a different attitude and has wholeheartedly followed me, I'll bring him to the land he had already explored. His descendants will possess it. Tomorrow you must turn around and go back into the desert and follow the road that goes to the Red Sea. So as you can see, God's patience has literally run thin, and the children of Israel were punished for not believing in the promise that God has given them. So make sure that you practice an attitude of gratitude and just truly know that God is in control and he will fight for you, and his promises are 100% good. And the last point that I want to make is the fact that you should never take advantage of God's favor. God's favor is not always 100% guaranteed. God's favor is not guaranteed when you become an unbeliever, when you take advantage of his favor, and when you don't apply it and when you neglect it. God is not going to be in your favor. So as long as you are acknowledging the fact that God is with you and God will provide for you, he will always be there. So the children of Israel did something really stupid. So Moses told them that God was not going to be with them anymore, and then they were regretful. So then they decided that they wanted to go into the land of Canaan and defeat the giants. But Moses said, no, don't do it. I already told you God's not going to be with you. So they did it anyway, and of course they were defeated because God's favor had left them. Had they actually believed in God's favor before, they would have been able to defeat those giants. But because they didn't, God forced them to wander in the wilderness for 40 years. So believe in the power of God and don't take advantage of God's favor, because when you take advantage of it, chances are it may leave you. All right, so those are my top 5 lessons on how you're able, that's 10, top 5 lessons on how you're able to believe in your promised land, have faith, stay motivated and stay inspired and stay encouraged. I know this year has been full of challenges, but don't be like the children of Israel. Don't be the ones that are complaining. Don't be nagging. just be grateful and don't feel as though you need to go back to 2019 or the years before, because God is taking you to a new place. God is taking you to your promised land. So make sure that although you can't really see what's in front of you right now, have a focused mindset and know that where God is taking you to is a much better place than where you actually came from. So I love you guys. I hope this video has motivated and inspired you, and I will talk to you next time. Stay glamorous.